So Ian, and Neil, correct me if I'm wrong. Ian, you didn't work on the Walker 2 sequel, did you? That you had left by, is that right? Or
No, I was still at DMA Design. I actually, I can't remember what my reasoning for not wanting to be part of that was, but
I remember.
they basically had me doing the Sega Genesis version of Walker. I think I was probably actually forced into that.
He was. He hated that. God, I remember it, Ian.
I can't even remember that. I guess
I remember this well. Yeah. So we were in this big ass room, right? So there's me on one corner over here, and there's like I think maybe 3 artists, and then Ian was around the corner in the same room. And David basically said to him, "Hey, this Walker thing is fairly popular. People like it, but if we're going to make money out of this, we need to take it to the Sega Genesis." Mm-hmm. So he said to Ian, "Right, make it happen." And Ian's like, "You do realize this game needs a mouse, right?"
Yeah.
So poor Ian was basically trying to kind of figure out some way to make the game playable, where you're moving the cursor with the joypad and the walker with the buttons and, all this kind of stuff. Wow. And it was a bit of a nightmare, and while Ian was working on that, Dave was like, "All right, Neil, get thinking about Walker 2. So I started putting my thinking cap on. And then as I kind of came up with little bits and pieces of ideas, I would take them around the corner to Ian and be like, "Hey, man, what do you think about this?" And then Ian would be like, "Oh, well, maybe we could add a bit of that." And we did add, a tremendous amount of features. I still have pretty much all of my Walker 2 original design documents. And there was a huge amount of things that we planned to add. I mean, sort of the main ones would be we wanted to stream the backgrounds. So we were going to use a CD-ROM format where as the walker moved along, as the scene moved along, it was actually being streamed off of a disc, because at that time, streaming games with better quality graphics that could be rendered in real time were kind of becoming a bit of a thing. So it was like, and Ian had introduced me to 3ds Max at that point, and I'd been messing around with that. So it was like, okay, well, maybe we can use 3ds Max to render these very, very detailed, extremely detailed backgrounds, which have very deep levels of parallax. And then we will stream those backgrounds off the disk, and we will superimpose on top of that video feed sprites. So we'll add sprites on top, the little figures and tanks and planes flying around, helicopters, what have you. So that was kind of the plan from a high level in terms of how the screen would look and behave. The other advantage to doing that was that if we streamed the backgrounds in, we could move the camera in innovative ways. So, not only was the game going to move left to right, there would be certain portions of the game where the walker's kind of, walking along the scene, where it would turn and look into the screen and it would actually take off. Oh, and wow. The camera would fly into the screen. So now the background is actually coming towards you, and then the walker would land, it would land again on the ground, and then you would be moving kind of in a different direction. So it's far more dynamic, than the previous implementation. And then the other big innovation that was planned for the game, which again, and a lot of these things were extremely ahead of their time, was this kind of RPG customization element. So as we mentioned earlier on, one of the things that, I really wanted to see in the original game was more different weapons. So Ian and I sort of got together and we put our hats together and sort of thought about, well, what kind of different weapons could we come up with? And a lot of them were really sort of kooky, funny, entertaining ideas. And there was basically a sort of management screen within the game where you could see almost the interior of the cockpit of the walker, and there was 9 slots that you could kind of rack equipment into. So if you think about a server farm, you have server blades that you put into a rack. So basically you could rack in these components, I should say, and each of these components had a different function. So some of them might be a grenade launcher, some of them might be a rocket launcher, some of them were a laser thing. And there was all kinds of hilarious things. Like, the one I remember distinctly that was very funny was you had the walker and it would fire these kind of trash can like projectiles, and they would land on the ground, sort of clang. And then the trash can would sort of break open and there was a Terminator inside of it.
Oh, nice.
And this Terminator would begin massacring all the little men, the bad guys. So you've got these little sort of bad guys running around. So you're deploying Terminators into the battlefield and they're basically massacring all these little guys. So there's lots of really, really fun ideas that we came up with. And you could kind of go back to this management screen and pull out modules and put new modules in and swap them around. So there was a lot of innovations there, again, that unfortunately didn't see the light of day. The other innovation was the idea of business progression, so that when you started the game, you were kind of a lowly new employee of a new company, and then as you completed more missions, you earned more money, and your kind of home base grew larger and more exotic, and you could do bigger jobs and buy more equipment. So it was a bigger game in every sense of the word.
What platforms was it going to be made for? Was it still Amiga, or would it have gone beyond that?
I don't think so. I'm tempted.
It was the 3DO, wasn't it?
That's the one, Ian. Yeah, it was that one, 3DO. Yeah, because 3DO was really big at that time, and that was where this CD streaming.
I was going to say, or unless it was a CD32, but it had to be, didn't it?
And it would have maybe trickled on from there to the Sega CD or something like that, maybe, had it actually ever been developed.